Canada has rescinded its digital tax in an effort to advance trade negotiations with the U.S. And this comes just days after U.S. President Donald Trump called off trade talks. On Friday, you'll remember, the president abruptly stopped negotiations with Canada over the tax targeting U.S. technology firms. He threatened a new tariff on Canadian goods within the next week. But then in a statement released late last night, the federal government said Prime Minister Carney and President Trump have agreed that parties will resume negotiations with a view towards agreeing on a deal by July 21st. That's where we sit this morning. So for more on where that leaves our trade talks with the U.S., we're joined by Frank McKenna, former Canadian ambassador to the United States. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, and happy Canada Day weekend to you and everybody else who's listening.
To you as well. You know, this tax, which had it taken effect this morning, would have brought in upwards, the latest estimates say it would have been upwards of $2 billion U.S. Some of that is retroactive pay. So what position is Canada now sitting in when it comes to trade negotiations with the U.S.? Where does this leave us?
Well, the tax was largely unloved anyway. It didn't have any real supporters in Canada and had attracted a lot of criticism. And the Minister of Finance had signaled that it would be an item that we would be prepared to negotiate at any rate. So it's no surprise we came to this conclusion. I thought that this would be the end result after the negotiation concluded, but the President clearly wanted this to be a condition precedent for the negotiations going ahead.
Is this perhaps this federal government's way of playing President Trump's game, like pushing forward with a threat or a hard tactic in order to be able to rescind and then restart?
Well, I doubt if it was that deliberate. I mean, this really started under the Trudeau administration, and it simply continued. But the amount of money involved is not great. Probably less than $1 billion a year would be collected on a run rate, and it's up against a $1 trillion relationship between Canada and the United States. So I think it was simply pragmatic for the government of Canada to flush it early on and get on to the negotiations.
Just to bring everybody up to speed on a quick timeline of talks, just in the last month, in the month of June, G7 talks were earlier this month. That's where the Prime Minister and the President announced this agreement to pursue negotiations towards a deal. We know that deadline is July 21st. Then Friday, Trump said he's done talking, terminating talks because of the digital tax. Then last night, I think it was around 10:30 p.m., the alert came on my phone. Or actually a little earlier than that, he made these comments on Fox News about Canada and that 51st state again. I'm going to play those for everybody in case they missed them.
Frankly, Canada should be the 51st state, okay? It really should, because Canada relies entirely on the United States. We don't rely on Canada.
So that was Sunday night. Then later Sunday night comes our announcement saying we've pulled back the DST. So where do you think Canada and U.S. relations stand right now? Outside of trade talks, where's our relationship sitting?
Well, look, we're dealing with a very unpredictable president. That's just fact. And we have to dig in for very tough and protracted negotiations. But I want to remind you and Canadians that we're not without strength. What President Trump says about Canada is just dead wrong. We bring a lot to the relationship. We're the biggest buyer of American goods. We're the biggest buyer of goods from almost every state in the Union, which is pretty important. We're the biggest provider of raw materials to the United States, which are then turned into jobs in the United States of America. And on the security relationship, I did a little homework over the weekend, and the results to me were simply stunning. The United States of America's got about 300,000 troops in the Pacific. It's got 50,000 troops in Europe, some 50,000 troops in Japan, probably 10,000 troops on the Mexican border. But for 100 years, there's never been a single soldier on the U.S.-Canada border. And that's because we've always had the Americans' back. And I don't think we deserve to have a knife put in our back. So we should realize when we go into these negotiations, we come from a position of strength, a reliable partner, a very strong commercial partner, and a very dependable security partner. And I think that we should go into these negotiations knowing that Canadians are proud of their country. We're not prepared to compromise when it comes to the integrity of our sovereignty.
With the talks now back on, and we understand that there was a call Sunday night between the two leaders, so there is conversation happening. How likely do you feel it is that both sides will reach an agreement by this imposed deadline of July 21st?
Well, I think people should level set their expectations. This is still a tough negotiation. Remember, we don't have a massive number of tariffs that we can compromise on. We've largely free trade between Canada and the United States if we're CUSMA compliant. The big ones would be things like steel and aluminum, and the United States really is facing its biggest single trading partner in steel and aluminum. We provide well over half of all of America's aluminum needs and 25% of their steel needs. So it would be very difficult for the United States simply to walk away from that. On the other hand, we might look at what Mexico's looking at, a quota system, or we might be able to find other concessions on steel and aluminum. By the way, the United States is just wrong on steel and aluminum. Canada provides something that the United States needs, and tens of thousands of smaller businesses in the United States are feeling the pain from tariffs. So it would be smart for them to repudiate those tariffs. But the 4 or 5 large companies that have President Trump's ear are probably going to insist on them keeping some form of tariffs on Canada and other countries around the world. So make no mistake, it's a tough negotiation, but fortunately, we've got some tough negotiators. They're experienced. They've been at this for a long time. They know what they're doing, and we come from a position of strength, extraordinary strength. We're not a country in the world that has a stronger position in negotiating with the United States of America, because President Trump is wrong. The United States does need Canada, and we have a lot to be proud of, and a lot to stand on when it comes to negotiations.
Quickly, just before I let you go, on 2 key points. One, when Trump last night was saying that we cheat on CUSMA on Fox News, and the other one, the second part of that post on Friday talked about an upcoming, here it is here. So we will let Canada know the tariff they will be paying to do business with the United States of America within the next 7-day period. Do you feel like us rescinding the DST will then perhaps eliminate this upcoming and unknown promised tariff?
Yes, absolutely. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been no reason for us to do it. I think this simply gets the negotiations back on track again, and hopefully we'll end up getting a deal.
Frank McKenna, former Canadian ambassador to the United States. Great to have you with us. And as you started out our conversation, happy Canada Day to you.
Thank you.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.